Jack awoke to darkness. He could not feel his body. It was as if he was floating in a cold, empty void. His mind tried to grasp where he was, but there were no answers. He couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even feel the air around him. It felt like he had been asleep for an eternity. The last thing Jack remembered was the mission. His unit had been sent to investigate a strange signal deep in the galaxy. It had been a dangerous assignment, and they were ambushed by an alien force they didn't even know existed. The enemy had killed most of his team, and Jack himself had barely survived, lying on the cold surface of an alien world. He had blacked out from his wounds and never woke up, at least, not until now. Jack tried to open his eyes, but they felt heavy. They wouldn't open. He tried again, his brain fighting to stay awake. Slowly, the world began to shift, like the layers of fog clearing from a morning sky. His eyelids fluttered, and then, for the first time in what felt like forever, his eyes opened. He saw a strange, metallic ceiling. The surface above him was smooth and cold, and it buzzed with faint humming energy. He could feel a coldness seeping through his body, but it wasn't a normal cold. It was the kind that seemed to freeze everything inside him. His heart raced, and with that small beat, a wave of panic washed over him. He was alive. But how? He tried to move his fingers, but nothing happened. His limbs felt stiff, as if they had been locked in place for a long time. The air was thin, too thin for a human to breathe. His chest tightened, but there was nothing he could do. His body wasn't responding. Panic swelled inside him, but then something changed. A figure stepped into his line of sight, a silhouette moving in front of a bright, glowing doorway. Jack's heart skipped a beat, his eyes widened, and his chest burned with an unfamiliar feeling. The figure was not human. She was tall, graceful, with an alien beauty that seemed beyond anything Jack had ever seen. Her skin was a soft shade of blue, smooth and glowing in the dim light. Her eyes were large, dark, and filled with a deep intelligence. She wore a simple suit of alien fabric, silver and flowing, that seemed to shift with her movements. Jack couldn't speak. His body was too frozen. But his mind raced with questions. Who was she? Where was he? And why had he been brought back from death? The alien woman moved closer, her eyes fixed on him. She studied him as if seeing him for the first time. Jack could feel her presence, her energy. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was warm, like sunlight on a cold day, wrapping around him. For a moment it almost felt as though her gaze could pierce through him, through his very soul. She reached out, her hand brushing against his frozen body. The touch was gentle, but it sent a shockwave through him, as if she had ignited something deep inside him. His heart, still racing, suddenly calmed for the briefest moment. There was a connection, something invisible but real, a thread between them that seemed to pulse with life. What? What are you doing? Jack tried to speak, but his voice was a whisper, barely audible. His lips trembled with the effort. He had to get out of this place. He had to find his way back to Earth. The alien woman's expression softened as she looked down at him, her fingers still resting on his cold skin. She spoke in a language Jack didn't understand, her words flowing like a soft melody. But somehow, he could feel the meaning in her voice, as though her words didn't need translation. "You're alive," she said, in a voice that carried the weight of wonder. "I did not think it was possible. You shouldn't be alive." Jack blinked, trying to make sense of what she had said. "What do you mean, where am I? Why am I here?" His voice cracked, the words barely escaping. The alien woman stepped back, her eyes never leaving him. She pressed a button on a small device attached to her wrist, and a soft blue light scanned over Jack's body. He felt a strange warmth from the light, like it was pulling the cold out of him. Slowly, he could feel his limbs begin to move again, a little more freely. "Am Lyra," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I am a scientist from the Xeraxian fleet. We found you in a stasis chamber, preserved for centuries. You've been frozen. But now, you're alive." Jack's mind raced, trying to process her words. "Frozen?" he asked, his voice still. "Weak. For how long? Lyra hesitated, her eyes searching his face as if trying to find the right words. Hundreds of years? Perhaps more? You, ... were left behind. But now you have come back. A strange sense of confusion overwhelmed him. How could he have been frozen for hundreds of years? He couldn't understand it. The last thing he remembered was the mission, the attack. Then ... nothing until now. What happened? Jack asked, still struggling to move, but Lyra's presence seemed to calm him. Somehow he felt as though he could trust her. Why did you wake me up? Lyra's expression softened, and she looked away for a moment, almost as if she were afraid of what she was about to say. I couldn't leave you. I saw you, and I felt ... something. You were too important to leave in the past. I had to see if I could bring you back. Jack stared at her, still trying to comprehend. You saved me. Lyra nodded slowly. Yes, but there's more. You are the first human to be revived in centuries. We know little of your kind, but I believe there is more to you than meets the eye. Jack could barely keep his eyes open. He was tired, his body still heavy with the effects of being frozen for so long. But the pull of Lyra's touch, her words, her warmth, it made him feel like maybe, just maybe, there was hope after all. He wasn't dead. He wasn't alone. And somehow this alien woman had brought him back to life, as he drifted into a light. Sleep. Jack couldn't help but feel that this strange new world might hold the answers he desperately needed. Jack's head spun as he slowly regained his strength. The cold that had once frozen him was now a distant memory. As he lay in a soft bed made of some unfamiliar material, his mind struggled to comprehend the alien world around him. Everything was so different, so new. The walls shimmered with a soft blue light, and the air smelled clean, almost metallic, like it had been filtered 1,000 times. He wanted to speak, but his throat was dry, his voice barely a whisper. Still, Lyra remained close, always within. Jack noticed how calm she was. There was no fear in her eyes, only a deep sense of curiosity, as if she was waiting for something. He didn't know what to say, but he felt the need to ask. Why me? Jack finally managed to say, his voice sounding weak, like it hadn't been used in a long time. Lyra, standing at the foot of the bed, turned toward him. Her eyes softened, and she took a few steps closer, almost as if the space between them needed to shrink. You were brought to us in a strange way, she began, her voice steady but gentle. The Xeraxians discovered your frozen body many years ago. We thought you were dead. I thought you were dead. She paused, looking down at her hands for a moment, almost as if lost in thought. But when I saw you, when I looked into your eyes, I knew you were more than just a relic of the past. Jack's mind raced. He had been on a mission, sent by his government to investigate a signal in a distant galaxy. Then everything went dark, and now he was here in a place that seemed so far from Earth. His heart ached for the life he had lost, the time he could never get back. I don't understand, Jack whispered, his brow furrowing. I was ... dead. How am I here? Iris. Eyes met his, and she placed a hand on his arm, her touch soft and comforting. You weren't completely dead. Something inside you was still alive. I ... I couldn't leave you behind. Jack looked up at her, trying to understand. She was the one who had revived him. She had brought him back from the dead. But why? Why? Would she risk so much for someone like him? You didn't even know me, Jack said, his voice filled with wonder and confusion. Why did you bring me back? I'm just a soldier. Lyra's gaze never left his face. That's what I was trying to figure out, she said softly. When I first saw you, I felt ... something, a pull, like we were meant to meet. The Xeraxians don't understand this feeling, but I know it's real. I couldn't let you stay in the past. You deserve to have a future. Jack could hardly believe what she was saying. It was almost too much to process. She had revived him, not just out of duty, but because she felt a connection to him. A deep, unexplainable connection. He couldn't understand it, but a part of him ... A small part of him wanted to believe her. Where am I? Jack asked, his voice trembling as he tried to sit up, but his body was still weak. What is this place? Akira moved to the side, pressing a button on a control panel nearby. The walls of the room shifted, revealing a large window that looked out into space. Jack's eyes widened as he saw the stars stretching out before him, more stars than he had ever seen in his life. There were no cities, no signs of Earth, just endless space. "You are on the Xeraxian flagship," Lyra said, her tone serious. "We are far from Earth. You are in the heart of Xeraxian space, a place beyond human reach, a place few humans have ever been." Jack stared at the stars, his mind spinning. He had no idea how he had ended up so far from home. He had been a soldier, someone who fought for his planet. Now, he was in the hands of a race he didn't understand, in a galaxy that was not his own. "How did we get here?" Jack asked, still in disbelief. "I don't even know how I'm still alive," Lyra hesitated for a moment, looking over at him, her face full of emotion. "The Xeraxians have the technology to keep you in stasis." "Ah! But it was me who brought you back. I used our medical tech, but it was more than just technology that saved you. I couldn't explain it fully, but I feel as if we were destined to meet." Jack's mind raced as he tried to process everything. He had been saved by an alien, not just an alien, but one who had risked everything to bring him back. He couldn't explain it. He couldn't even begin to understand how any of this was possible. All he knew was that this alien woman, Lyra, had given him something he had lost long ago, a chance at life. "You're saying we're connected?" Jack asked, still struggling to make sense of the words. Lyra nodded, her eyes softening. "Yes, I believe we are. And that is why. I'm going to help you understand this new world you find yourself in." Jack looked at her, the confusion in his chest slowly starting to fade. There was something about her, something in her eyes that made him feel like he wasn't alone anymore. She had brought him back to life, and now she was offering him a chance to find his place in a galaxy far from home. "What happens now?" Jack asked, his voice still raw, but stronger than before. Lyra smiled softly, a faint glimmer of hope shining through her eyes.
"Ow."
"You begin a new life. A life that, I believe, you were meant to have." Jack looked out into the vastness of space, the weight of his old life beginning to feel like a distant memory. His new life was uncertain, filled with mysteries he couldn't yet understand. But for the first time since waking up, Jack didn't feel entirely lost. With Lyra by his side, maybe, just maybe, he would find a way to belong again. Jack felt a strange pull in his chest as he looked out at the stars. The vastness of space stretched endlessly before him, and a feeling of isolation began to set in. How had he ended up here? This was not Earth. His entire world was gone, and yet he had been given a second chance by her. By Lyra, the alien woman who had revived him, who had risked so much to bring him back from death. The thought made Jack's heart beat faster, and not from fear. There was something about her, something he couldn't explain, that made him feel as if he were meant to be here. But at the same time, he still had so many questions. What was his place in this galaxy that was so far from everything he had known? He turned his head to look at Lyra, who was standing near the control panel, her fingers gently tracing the buttons. She glanced at him, and their eyes met. For a moment, everything else seemed to fade away. Couldn't quite put it into words, but there was a quiet understanding between them. She had saved him, and in return, he wanted to learn more about her, about everything she had done for him. "Where do we go from here?" Jack asked quietly, his voice still rough, but filled with determination. "What happens next?" Lyra stepped toward him, her movements fluid and graceful, as if she was in no hurry. She stopped beside the bed and looked at him thoughtfully, her large, dark eyes studying him with a mixture of curiosity and something else, something deeper. "There's much to learn, Jack," she said softly. "About you, about your world, about us." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Us," he repeated, his mind racing. He couldn't deny that there was something growing between them, connection that felt more powerful than anything he had ever experienced. But how could he even begin to understand it? Lyra nodded, her expression serious. "You were revived for a reason. I believe your presence here is important, not just for me, but for the future of both our species. I know it's hard to understand right now, but we need to find out why you're here and what the Zeraxians want from you." Jack looked at her, still processing her words. The Zeraxians? He hadn't even thought about them until now. They were the ones who had captured him, the ones who had stored his body. But Lyra, she was different. She wasn't like the rest of them. "Why are you helping me?" Jack asked, his voice filled with both wonder and confusion. Why not just leave me frozen? Why go through all this trouble to bring me back?" Lyra hesitated for a moment, as if weighing her words carefully. She stepped closer, her presence filling the space between them. "Because I believe in something. I believe that you're important. More important than you know. I couldn't just leave you behind, Jack. I couldn't." Jack felt a lump form in his throat as he looked at her. Her eyes something genuine. He could see it. She wasn't just saving him because it was her job, or because it was the right thing to do. She was doing it because she felt something strong. He wasn't sure if it was love or something else, but it was real. And it was enough to make him feel like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone in the universe. "What do you mean?" "Important?" Jack asked, his voice quieter now. "Just a soldier. I don't understand. What could I possibly do?" Lyra reached out and gently placed her hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and calming. "You don't need to understand everything right now, but I can tell you this. You were brought here for a reason. Zeraxians are not the only ones interested in you. There are other forces at work. And soon, you will be at the center of something much larger than you could ever imagine." Jack swallowed hard, his heart pounding. He had no idea what Lyra meant, but he could feel the weight of her words. Something was happening, something big. And he was right in the middle of it, but what? He had no answers, just questions. Before he could speak, a soft chime echoed through the room. The lights in the walls flickered, casting a soft glow on everything around them. Lyra stepped back and walked to a console, pressing a few buttons. The image of a star system appeared on a screen, a vast network of planets and moons in orbit. "We've been tracking a signal," Lyra said, her voice tense. "It's a distress. Signal from a human Kalania place, not far from here. It seems they're under attack." Jack's heart skipped a beat. A human colony? How could that be? Earth was long gone, or at least, that's what he had been told. How could there still be humans out here, and who was attacking them? "What do you mean?" Jack asked, trying to sit up, but still feeling weak. "How is that even possible?" I thought Earth was lost." Lyra turned to face him, her expression serious. "Not all humans perished. Some escaped, scattered throughout the galaxy. And now, we must decide what to do." Jack felt a sudden sense of urgency. He may have been brought back for a reason. But this was his chance to do something, to make a difference. He had been given a second chance at life. He couldn't waste it. "What are we going to do?" Jack asked, his voice steady now, the confusion slowly giving way to a fierce determination. "We can't just sit here. We have to help them." Lyra's eyes sparkled with a mixture of admiration and something deeper. "I knew you'd say that. I knew you wouldn't turn away from the chance to fight for your kind." Jack took a deep breath. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. It was something more, something new. He didn't know exactly what that was, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to stand by and do nothing. As he looked at Lyra, the quiet strength in her eyes mirrored his own resolve. He didn't know what the future held or where this journey would take him, but he was ready to face it. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it with Lyra by his side. Together, they would discover the truth, and together, they would fight for the future of humanity. The days that followed Jack's awakening were filled with discovery, confusion, and a growing connection between him and Lyra. Each passing moment seemed to deepen the bond that had formed between them. A bond that neither of them fully understood, but both felt strongly. It was a strange feeling for Jack. He had always been a soldier, a man of action, and now he found himself in the company of an alien who had brought him back to life and was showing him an entirely new world. Lyra, for her part, seemed just as uncertain about what was happening between them. She had a purpose, helping Jack understand the galaxy, teaching him about her people and their technology, but there was something else, something that kept pulling her toward him, something More than curiosity, it was as if their fates were linked in some way that neither could explain. One evening, as they sat together in the observation deck, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars, Jack turned to her. She had been quiet for a long time, staring at the stars just as he was. He wanted to understand her better, wanted to know why she felt this deep connection to him. But it was hard to put his thoughts into words. "Lyra," Jack began, his voice low. "Why me? Why'd you bring me back? You didn't know anything about me." Lyra's gaze shifted toward him, her expression softening. She had heard this question before, but each time it seemed to become more difficult to answer. There was so much she wanted to say, so much she didn't understand herself. But she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't ignore what she felt. "I don't know, Jack," she said quietly. "It's like when I saw you, I knew I had to help you. There was something in you, something I couldn't ignore. You were important even before I knew who you were." Jack didn't know what to say. Her words stirred something inside him, a feeling that was both comforting and unsettling. The idea that he was important, that he mattered in a way he had never thought about before, was strange. He had been just a soldier, a man sent to do a job, and now it seemed like his life was tied to something much bigger than he could understand. "I don't feel important," Jack admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I feel lost. Don't know where I fit in this new world. Everything's changed, and I don't know how to move forward." Lyra reached out, her fingers brushing against his arm in a gesture of comfort. The moment her skin touched his, Jack felt a jolt of warmth spread through him. It was as if her touch ignited something inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. His heart, which had once been frozen and lifeless, now beat with a steady rhythm, almost in time with hers. "You don't have to figure everything out right now," Lyra said softly. "We'll figure it out together, one step at a time." Jack turned to look at her, his eyes meeting hers. The connection between them felt deeper now, more real than ever before. He didn't know how or why it was happening, but he couldn't deny it. There was something powerful about her presence, about the way she made him feel like he wasn't alone. He had been brought back to life, yes. But it was her touch that gave him a sense of purpose. As the days passed, Jack and Lyra spent more time together. She taught him about the Zoraxian culture, their technology, and the galaxy they lived in. Jack learned that the Zoraxians were an advanced species with knowledge and technology far beyond anything humanity had ever developed. Their ships could travel faster than light, and their medical technology was capable of things Jack had never imagined. But despite all their advancements, there was one thing that set them apart from humans' emotion. The Zoraxians, Lyra explained, didn't experience emotions the way humans did. They were logical, calculating, and driven by reason. Jack found it difficult to understand. Emotions were so much a part of being human, and yet here he was, surrounded by beings who couldn't fully comprehend them. Lyra, though, was different. She was more compassionate, more empathetic, and he had begun to realize that her feelings for him went beyond just curiosity or obligation. One night as they sat together, in the quiet of the observation deck, Jack reached out, his hand hovering just above hers. He didn't know why he did it. Maybe it was the quiet, the stillness of the moment, or the way her presence made him feel safe. Whatever it was, he couldn't deny the pull between them. Lyra looked at him, her eyes soft. She didn't pull away. Instead, she placed her hand in his, the touch sending a wave of warmth through both of them. It wasn't a simple gesture. It was something deeper, something that neither of them had ever felt before. Jack didn't know what this was. He didn't know if it was love or something else entirely. But in that moment, with Lyra's hand in his, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't alone anymore. And for the first time since waking up, he didn't feel like an outsider. He felt like he belonged. The connection between them grew stronger with each passing day. They talked, shared stories, and laughed together. Jack began to feel more at home on the Zoraxian ship than he ever thought possible. Lyra, too, seemed to be changing. She was no longer the detached scientist who had simply revived him. She had become something more, someone who cared deeply for him. Someone who wanted to see him succeed in this strange, new world. But the bond between them wasn't just about the things they shared. It was about the way they felt when they were together. It was a bond that neither of them had ever experienced before, something beyond friendship, beyond duty. It was something that felt as though it had been there all along, waiting for the right moment to be realized. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of the observation deck, Jack looked out at the stars, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. He wasn't sure what the future held. There were still so many questions, so many unknowns. But for the first time since waking up, he wasn't afraid. He had Lyra by his side, and together they would face whatever came next. "You were right," Jack said softly, his gaze still on the stars. "We'll figure it out together." Lyra smiled, her hand tightening around his. "Yes, Jack, together." And in that moment they both knew that whatever the future held, they would face it side by side. The tension under the bridge was thick. The air filled with the hum of machinery and the distant sound of approaching ships. Jake could feel the ship's presence more than ever, like a pulse within him. The ship, once a silent shell of destruction, now thrummed with life, was ready to face the forces that sought to take it back, to control it once more. But this time, the ship wasn't just a weapon, it was something more. It was his ally. The sound of engines grew louder, and Jake's heart raced. He could hear them, the galactic ships drawing closer, their intentions clear. They wanted the ship back, and they wouldn't stop until they got it. Jake had no idea how much time they had. But one thing was certain. If they didn't act fast, the galaxy would reclaim the ship, and no one knew what that would mean for Earth. "Jake," a voice whispered in his mind, the ship's voice soft but firm. "You must choose. We can't run. We must fight." Jake nodded, the weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders. He had never been a soldier, never fought for anything but survival, but this wasn't about survival anymore. This was about something bigger. The ship had trusted him, and he had to trust it in return. The first of the galactic ships appeared. In the distance, its sleek frame cutting through the dark sky. It was massive, its engines glowing with power. Jake's breath caught in his throat as he realized just how outmatched they were, but the ship had been with him for weeks now. It had shown him its power, its secrets, and now it was his turn to use them. "Prepare yourself," Jake whispered, his voice steady, despite the fear rising in him. He reached out, touching the ship's hull. The surface was warm beneath his fingertips, and for the first time, Jake felt a sense of purpose. The ship responded to his touch, its systems coming alive, humming and pulsing with energy. "Let's show them what we can do," Jake muttered. The ship's engines roared to life, lifting off the ground with a sudden force that nearly knocked Jake off his feet. The bridge shook, the metal beneath his feet, groaning under the weight of the ship's power. But Jake didn't move. He couldn't. Not now. He stood firm, his feet planted on the ground, as the ship lifted into the sky, its massive form rising above the bridge. The galactic ships were closing in, but the ship under Jake's command was ready. The ship, now fully reactivated, was a force to be reckoned with. The once powerful fleet, thinking they had the upper hand, it's about to learn the truth. They were not the only ones with power. Enemy ships approaching, the ship's voice informed Jake, its tone calm and collected, calculating the best course of action. Jake didn't have to say a word. He trusted the ship. He knew it would do what needed to be done. The ship moved, its sleek form cutting through the sky. With incredible speed, the galactic ships attempted to surround them, but the ship wasn't having it. With a sudden burst of speed, it darted to the left, dodging a barrage of lasers that came crashing through the air where it had just been. "Nice try," Jake said with a grin, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The ship fired back, its weapons lighting up the sky in blinding flashes. Galactic ships tried to retaliate, but the ship under Jake's command was faster, smarter. Every move it made was calculated, every shot precise. The battle was quick, chaotic, but decisive. The ship's sensors locked onto the enemy fleet. With a flick of Jake's wrist, the ship's weapons fired again, this time taking out one of the enemy ships in a single shot. The explosion was massive, a fireball that lit up the night sky. The enemy ships faltered, their formation broken. But they weren't done yet. Another ship tried to flank them, but the ship was ready. It twisted in midair, its engines roaring as it veered towards the new threat. With a swift, powerful strike, it sent another ship tumbling from the sky. Jake's heart raced as he realized they were winning. This was no longer a fight for survival. It was a fight for control. The ship had chosen him to lead it. But as the enemy ships fell back, Jake knew the real challenge was yet to come. The largest ship in the fleet was still out there, its weapons aimed directly at them. It wasn't going to give up that easily. The ship's voice echoed in Jake's mind once more. "We have a choice. Continue fighting, or find a way to end this peacefully." Jake didn't hesitate. He had come. This far, there was no turning back now. "We fight," he said, his voice filled with determination. With a decisive move, the ship surged forward, its engines flaring as it charged straight toward the massive enemy vessel. The battle was far from over, but Jake knew one thing. For sure, he wasn't alone in this fight, and together they would win. The battlefield had fallen silent. The once thriving galactic fleet, with its intimidating ships and advanced weapons, was now scattered in pieces across the sky. The largest ship, the one that had seemed impossible to defeat, had been forced to retreat. The ship that Jake had come to know, the ship that had become his ally, had proven itself a true force of nature. And Jake, the man who had once been just another forgotten soul under a bridge, was now standing at the heart of the galaxy's most powerful weapon. Jake looked out at the wreckage, his heart pounding in his chest. He was still trying to process everything that had happened. Just hours ago, he had been sitting on the cold, hard ground under that bridge, thinking that nothing could change. Now, he stood beside a ship capable of altering the course of the galaxy. It was hard to believe. "We did it," Jake whispered, his voice full of awe. The ship, hovering beside him, hummed softly in response. "We did, Jake. Together, we achieved the impossible." Jake smiled, but a feeling of unease settled deep inside him. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. He could still sense the looming threat of the galaxy's more powerful factions, those who would stop at nothing to reclaim the ship. They wouldn't let it go so easily, and Jake knew that soon enough. Others would come searching for them, but for now they had time. The ship had given Jake a chance to decide what to do next, and he was determined to make the right choice. He was no longer the homeless man hiding under a bridge. He was a partner to the ship, a defender of a future that no one had expected. "Where do we go from here?" Jake asked, looking up at the ship. The ship's voice filled his mind once more, calm and confident. "We decide together, Jake. I will follow your lead." Jake nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. He could take the ship and disappear, hiding somewhere where the galaxy couldn't find them. But something deep inside him told him that wasn't the right choice. The galaxy needed to see what humanity was capable of. They needed to see that humans weren't just helpless in the face of the galaxy's power. They could be strong, resilient, and determined. And they could shape their own future. "We need to make sure the galaxy knows we're not to be messed with," Jake said firmly, the weight of the decision settling on him. "We need to show them that we won't be pushed around." The ship hummed in agreement. "I will assist you in any way I can. You are my partner, Jake, and together we will protect Earth." The ship's words gave Jake the strength he needed. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The galaxy had its sights set on them, and it wouldn't be long before they sent more ships to hunt them down. But Jake wasn't afraid anymore. He had the ship, and the ship had him. They were in this together. As Jake turned and looked out, at the horizon, a new determination filled him. Earth had always been seen as small, insignificant, a planet full of weak, helpless people. But now, with the power of the ship at his side, Jake knew they could change that. Earth was no longer a place to be ignored. It was a place that would make its mark on the galaxy, and no one would be able to stop them. The ship's systems had analyzed the galaxy's defenses, and it had a plan. The ship would teach the galaxy what it meant to face true power. No longer would Earth be at the mercy of others. Jake and the ship would lead humanity into a new era, one where they would no longer be pushed aside or forgotten. As the ship hovered over the wreckage of the enemy fleet, Jake could feel the weight of history on his shoulders. This was a turning point for Earth, a moment that would be remembered for generations. No longer would humanity be the underdog. The fight for the future had just begun, and Jake was ready to lead. "Where do we start?" Jake asked, his voice steady with resolve. "We start by showing them who we are," the ship replied. "We show them that humans are not weak, and we will never be controlled again." Jake took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the stars. Ta-ta! Galaxy was vast, filled with power and threats. But now, Earth had something that could match it. With the ship, Jake had the strength to protect his world. Together, they would rise, and the galaxy would know their name. And so, with a new sense of purpose, Jake and the ship set their course. The future was theirs to shape, and they would do it together. The galaxy had no idea what was coming.